So today is a day that we recognize and remember Dr. King. Um, a lot of times when we talk about Dr. King, we only remember certain things. Um, we only remember, the top of the list of things. We remember the "I Had a Dream" speech. We remember the march. We remember the big uh, things. Um, so to see where I'm going with this, I have to give you a little bit of my history. So I'm from the Northeast. My grandparents lived in Harlem, Teaneck, New Jersey, Brooklyn, places like that. And so growing up in the Northeast, especially in the ghettos of the Northeast, um, we learned a lot about Martin Luther King, of course, but we also learned a lot about Malcolm X. And so, growing up, we heard a lot of stories because that's what was big in that area. So my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, and my aunt were actually in the room when Malcolm X was killed. So growing up, a lot of times, I used to have to say, people really didn't know the history of Malcolm X because a lot of times they would compare the two. They would compare Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And so one of the things that I realized growing up and even as an adult is at the same time a lot of people didn't know Dr. King either. And that's unfortunate because they only knew the top things that made it into the greeting card. A lot of people never even heard his speeches, never listened to the man's speeches. You can write a book about somebody, and that's fine. There's a lot of good books about Dr. King. There's some so-so books about Dr. King as well. But if you want to know what a man really feels inside, you need to listen to what he says to the people he loves. Martin Luther King loved us. His speeches to us will tell you everything you need to know about that man. If you listen to the speeches, you'll find out that he supported workers' rights, that he supported unions' rights, he supported women's rights. He agreed that union rights, worker rights were civil rights. He gave his life not just defending people to go to whatever bathroom that they wanted to use, which for some reason we seem to be fighting that fight today. He didn't just give his life so that we could have the right to vote. He gave his life so that everybody could have an equal economic opportunity to make something of their life and to be able to take care of their families. The mountaintop speech was to a room full of union workers. The man died in Memphis fighting for union workers, sanitation workers, ASHME workers. Sometimes that part gets left out of history. We forget how big the fight really, really is. We forget that we are now arguing about things that people died for. Dr. King was talking about right to work way, way, way back when. He said, be careful when you hear people using slogans like right to work, where they're trying to convince you that collective bargaining is not okay because they want to take away rights that we fought for. That was his legacy. And if you're going to remember somebody's legacy, remember the whole legacy. Because he understood it didn't make a difference if we all could vote, if we couldn't feed our children. He understood that it didn't make any difference what bathroom we could use if we could not educate our children. He understood that. But it's our job to remember that. It's our job to make sure that does not get forgotten. Listen to his old speeches. Listen to what he thought. Listen to what he believed. Listen to what he died for. That man only walked this earth for 39 years, and he was gone. People talk about him like he was 60 something years old, he was 50 something years old. The man never made it out of his 30s, and he was gone. He changed the world as a young man. So not only do we need to give credit to that, and do we need to remember that, but us young people, we need to ask ourselves, are we living up to that expectation? That man was 20 years old, changing the world. He wasn't afraid of dogs. He wasn't afraid of the water hoses. You know what he was afraid of? The future, if he didn't do something about it. Young people, what are we doing? What are we doing to change our future? Are we living up to that dream?